Southern Sense on Blog Talk Radio. So turn up the volume and enter our chat room or grab your phones. Call in and join the conversation. Help us to restore the Republic to this country and inspire the majority to be silent no longer. Welcome to another exciting show with Southern Sense on Blog Talk Radio.
Tell the truth every time, yes, you can count on me. I've got the backbone, American. I've got the heart, American. I've got the will, American. Will you stand up? Don't sit down. Stand up, don't back down. Stand up and shout it out. Stand up, let's make it loud. American, 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 American.
Welcome back to Southern Sense. Hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. You're listening to Southern Sense here on Blog Talk Radio, Pundit Press, Kinetic Hi-Fi, The Fix FM, half a dozen other places I forget. Just go to southern-sense.com and click on the radio tab, and you will see that we are listed as number 16 at toptalkradio.com. I'm your hostess with the mostest, the radio chick, Annie. And again, slipping into the guest co-host spot, one of the most fantastic people that is the supporter of a lot of BTR hosts, especially this show. A special welcome out to our sweet Sue from New Mexico. Good afternoon, Sue.
Oh, good afternoon, Annie. And my goodness, what a guest you've got. I went to his blog. He is a prolific blogger. I just can't wait.
Yeah, Mike happens to be an old friend, and I tell the story often. That I met him when I was working as a police officer in the 90th Precinct. He worked on the murder case of police officer Bob Machadi, who was a friend of mine, and I believe it was a year ago that we dedicated one of our shows to. And I lost track with him. You know, he was running upstairs to the borough, so we just passed each other and just simply say hi. I didn't know him that well, but I just knew him and knew of him. Very, very distinctive voice. And years later, I'm at the very first South Carolina Tea Party Coalition convention, and I hear his voice, and he's talking behind me to someone, and he's talking about Bob Machadi. So I kind of like inched closer, and I looked at him going, like, I know this man. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we both said, we know each other. And as we started talking, we realized, you know, the connection. You know, he has remained a good friend and a frequent guest on the show. He calls me on the cell phone, and he'll be there for 45 minutes straight, easily. He's going to be a fun guest.
Isn't it funny how fate steps in?
Oh, yes. I wouldn't say so much fate, but God. And if you hear a little banging, I'm just trying to adjust my microphone here. It's starting to slip down. Ah, man. Speaking of INS and Border Patrol agents, people that listen to the show know that we start off with a dedication to a fallen hero. And it can be a first responder, it could be a federal agent, it could be a military personnel. But today's dedication is going to go out to slain Border Patrol agent Nicholas J. Ivey. And as I bring up the dedication, which is the Eternal Father hymn, this is taken from several different news locations. This one is from Deseret News by Dennis Romboy. The U.S. Border Patrol agent killed in a shooting in southeastern Arizona opened fire on two fellow agents apparently thinking they were armed smugglers and was killed when they returned fire, the head of Border Patrol Agent Union said. Investigators providing the details to the wife and brother of Utah native Nicholas J. Ivey, but the information wasn't shared with the public for a while. Christopher Ivey and Joel Ivey, also a Border Patrol agent, told the rest of the family just prior to a visit from Homeland Security Janet Napolitano and Border Patrol Deputy Commissioner David Aguilera. in the Sierra Vista home. It was pretty somber. It was pretty quiet in the room. Nobody really knew how to take it, another brother, Chris Ivy, told the Deseret News. It was a lot easier when you thought it was a bad guy out there. National Border Patrol Council President George McCubbin recanted how the deadly shooting occurred in an Associated Press story. Two sets of agents approached an area where a sensor had been activated from different directions and encountered each other in an area of heavy brush, he said. Ivy, 30, apparently opened fire first and wounded one of the other agents, but was killed in the return fire. I don't know what it was he saw or heard that triggered the whole event, McCubbin said. Unfortunately, it resulted in his death and another agent injured. Chris Ivy said Napolitano and Aguilera assured the family Nick Ivy didn't do anything wrong and that they would have done the same thing under the circumstances. It is all a tragic accident, he said, nothing more. Sensors are set up in different areas along the U.S.-Mexico border to detect smugglers or illegal immigrants, with Border Patrol agents responding when they are set off. The shooting occurred in a rugged, hilly area about 5 miles north of the border near Bisbee, Arizona, in an area known for illegal trafficking. McCubbin and Rathrock both said two sets of agents knew the others were heading to the area, but apparently didn't know they were so close. McCubbin said he had been briefed by the agency with Rothrock's agency that had been involved with the investigation. It was very dark, a very, very rugged terrain, and what they could see of each other was further obscured by the fact there was brush and cacti and stuff like that between them. I have no doubt that these agents were in as heightened as a state of alert as you can due to the proximity to the border and the history of trafficking in the area. Rathrock said that when the agents spotted each other in the dark, they apparently took defensive postures, which was probably interpreted as aggressive postures, like readying your weapons, for example. Rathrock said he believed the agents' actions were appropriate and in accordance with their training, had they in fact been engaging people involved in illegal activities. Unfortunately, they weren't engaging people involved in those illegal activities. They were engaging each other. And from USA Today, the service started after a 5-mile procession from a funeral home to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints meeting house here. A horse-drawn carriage conveyed Ivy's coffin, draped with an American flag. A riderless horse in the procession represented Ivy, shot to death on October 2nd, 2012, in a remote mountainous area known for drug smuggling, that's 6 miles east of Bisbee, Arizona. Friend Aaron Carr noted that Ivy's wife, Christy, said, "Shouldn't say goodbye so soon to a husband." He called Ivy, the youngest of 5 children, a really great dad to his own 2 daughters. Ivy had a sixth sense about tracking groups crossing the border illegally, Carr said, but Ivy became a paramedic to help treat people in those groups who were in distress. Ivy's older brother, Joel, who was also a member of the Border Patrol, said Nicholas Ivy learned Spanish while on his Mormon mission in Mexico and came to love the people. Joel Ivy said his brother installed the sensor he was responding to when he was killed. Nick Ivy knew the hilly area very well, said Joel Ivy, describing it as a beautiful place. He said he believes his brother died a peaceful death. "My brother would want those left behind to live lives of charity as he did," Joel Ivy said. Nick Ivy lived by example so others can come to Christ. This show is dedicated to Border Patrol agent Nicholas J. Ivy, killed October 2nd, 2002. And we dedicate this show also to all the other federal agents out there doing hard and terrible jobs, to first responders, and to the military men and women in uniform who have served, who are serving, and will serve. We dedicate the song by Todd Allen Henry, "My Name is America." God bless everyone.
in the grip of oppression. I fought for my liberty. I paid with the blood of my people. Freedom has never been free. Now my door's always open to dreamers and friends. But when I'm attacked, I protect and defend. Because my name is America. I stand proud and free. My name is America. Don't tread on me. I cannot be broken. I cannot be shamed. If you hurt me, I'll get stronger. And I'll rise up from the flames. And I'll always stand proud and free. I'm America, don't tread on me. America is my name. My strength was not taken from others. Others gave it to me. They believe in the virtues I stand for. My respect for humanity. Now I'm challenged by tyrants who envy my power, but their vicious deeds become my finest hour. Because my name is America. I stand proud and free. My name is America. Don't tread on me. I cannot be broken. I cannot be shamed. If you hurt me, I'll get stronger. And I'll rise up from the flames. And I'll always stand proud and free. I'm America, don't tread on me. America is my name. For those who need me, I'll always be here. For those who will harm me, I'll face without fear. But I'll always stand proud and free. I'm America, don't tread on me. I'm America, yes, America is my name. Is my name.
Hi, my name is America. I want to welcome everyone back, those that are listening in online as well as the chat room. If you are listening in online and you want to participate, just remember to press 1 so I know to bring your call in on the air. Thank you for everyone up in the chat room. You're here listening to Southern Sense on Blog Talk Radio, Pundit Press, Kinetic Hi-Fi, the Fix FM, half a dozen other different places. SHR Media, I have to give a shout out to them. If you want to know where we are, just go to southern-sense.com and click on the radio tab. And also notice that we are listed at number 16 as a top conservative talk show on toptalkradio.com. Sue, you ready to rock and roll? Sweet Sue is my special guest co-host today. You ready?
Oh, you better believe it. Let's get rocking.
All right. I got my good friend, my old friend, and I'm proud to call him that because he's got more gray hair than I do, Mike Cutler on the air.
Cold and cruel, but you're right. and you're leaving out my bald spot that my wife calls my pink yarmulke because I'm a Jew from Brooklyn.
Well, I haven't seen you in person, I think now about 2 years, so that's a new addition to
Oh,
your,
no, it's not. It's been there for a while.
Oh, maybe I'm just too short. I can't see the top of your
That's
head.
the issue. That's the issue, Annie. It's always great joining you.
Oh, man. You have yourself a radio show here in BTR, and you are yet to open up a chat room on it, so one of these days I'm going to sneak in and then show you how to do it.
Okay, we'll have to do that the next time, because usually I'm juggling because I am a one-man operation, but yeah, we have to do that.
Well, I'm a one-woman operation, unfortunately. So, yeah, I do it all. I got 2 computers running at the same time.
There you go,
But
to rub your
you.
belly and pat your head at the same time as well, I'm sure.
Yeah. But you're up on USA Radio, correct?
Yes, I am, at Blog Talk, and I've been at it for years. And, you know, it's all part of my same mission ever since 9/11, to try to wake people up to the real nature, the real significance of immigration, and not just border security, you know, this smoke screen, this distraction of, well, we're going to secure the Mexican border and then the sun will shine and everything is great. The immigration system has so many components, all of them intentionally being sabotaged by our own government. And this has been going on for decades. We didn't wind up with this crisis overnight. And, you know, Annie, what angers me the most, and I was on a radio program earlier today also, I do a lot of radio. There was a time I might have done 15 television interviews in a month. I don't think I do 15 in a year now, except for some of the smaller upstart programs, you know, Newsmax, One American News Network. I've become something of a regular with Graham Ledger, Ledger Report, the Daily Ledger rather, which is fine. But the mainstream media and our politicians and corporate America and other special interest groups really see in our open borders and in the multitude of failures of the immigration system huge profits. You know, the nonsense with Disney firing all of their American computer people, their IT departments. We saw the same thing in California with Southern California Edison Power. We are witnessing the intentional dismantling of the American middle class. It's the looting of our country. And it couldn't come at a worse time between the economic crisis and the threats posed by international terrorists. The idea that we have millions of people in our country, no way of knowing who they are, what country they are from, and yet we're being told that it would be miraculous for America to give them all lawful status. And what's being left out of this conversation is the amount of money that it costs our economy. Let me start out with something, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, so we'll play a couple of riddles here. Guess which country gets the greatest amount of remittances in the world?
What do you mean by remittances?
Money wired home by their workers working in other countries.
I would say Mexico.
No, you see, because everyone believes it's Mexico. No, it's India, followed by China. Now, the U.S. economy is losing money. Last year, India got over $70 billion, with a B, $billion by their workers, many of them working here in the United States, and they send their money home. I don't blame these people, by the way. If you could go to Canada and make 3 or 4 times more than you make in the United States, and then if you were able to send the money back to your family, wouldn't you do it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Would that help the Canadian economy or hurt the Canadian economy?
Definitely hurt it, because that money would go back to be recirculated in our own economy.
Right, and that's called the multiplier effect. Last year, the United States lost a minimum of $125 billion. It may be as high as 200, and that's the visible money. That's not the money that gets moved covertly. So now, look what happened to the economy. The Indian economy last year went up by this year, first quarter, went up 7.5%. The American economy went down by 0.7%. And believe me, there's a lot more than just remittances involved. But don't you think that massive amount of money moving out of our country did damage?
Oh, absolutely. We got a caller here, Mike. This is a friend of ours, and my former co-host, Cool Mike. Good afternoon, Mikey. Go ahead.
Hey, how we doing? Always a pleasure. This is one of our favorite guests. And
thank you so much.
You get you two New Yorkers together. Just a quick comment, Annie. Did you see that Corey Claggett was granted parole?
No, I have
Yes.
missed that.
He's been Corey's mother has been on the show. He was a soldier. He enlisted at age 18. At 18 and a half, they put handcuffs on him in Baghdad. He was in wherever the place we entered and we gassed. So anyway, and he's been sitting in Leavenworth prison. Now, mind you, he signed up when he was 18, right out of high school. I don't think it was Ramadi, but it was Fallujah. So anyway, so he's just been granted parole. His mother has been on this show numerous times pleading her cases. She's been on national TV, but anyway, he will be granted parole in March. So, I didn't know if anyone knew that. Throw that out there. My question for our guest is, what does it take before any stupid Americans, which I think is they call us stupid Americans, there couldn't be a better phrase ever. What is it going to take for us stupid Americans to really, really open our eyes long term? It seemed like for 9/11, our eyes were open till Christmas. Then they were closed again.
Yeah.
What is it going to take?
And look, we've had attack after attack, and they're holding a hearing today, and that's a great question. They're holding a hearing, and I ask it myself frequently. They're holding a hearing today in Washington. I don't know if you're aware of this, because they just discovered that in addition to all the other problems with the TSA, did you hear the latest disaster?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Yes, 73 TSA screeners, turn out, are on the terror watch list. Think about that. People, talk about who watches the watchers. So the people that are getting you out of your jackets and going through your belongings and patting you down, 73 of them now turn out to be on a no-fly terror watch list. They have access to the airplanes. They could easily slip something into somebody's pocket or someone's briefcase, even maybe without the person knowing it. The lunacy of what we are doing as a country. But look at this contrast. As soon as they knew that weapons were getting past the TSA, and here's the question that I answered. How many of the people that work for TSA to test the system, the red team, claim to be trusted travelers? I just had this argument with somebody yesterday. I said, we have a trusted traveler program, and there's an old Johnny Carson program that probably most of the audience is too young to remember. It's called Who Do You Trust? Before he did the Tonight Show. So my question is, who do we trust? You have people that if they fly enough times and submit themselves to a background investigation, can then pay $99 a year so that they don't have to take their shoes off. They can leave their laptop computers in their briefcases, and they could leave a light jacket on. So they're going to be given streamlined, a much more cursory look because they paid $99 and they were subjected to some kind of a background check, which is worthless. If they don't even know who in blazes is doing the security at the airport, what do you think the value of that background check is for the Trusted Traveler program? And I'd love to know if the people that were able to smuggle the weapons past security in the test that they did, if any of them were pretending to be part of the Trusted Traveler program. I do a lot of flying. I do a lot of speaking engagements around the country. A few months ago, I flew out to Montana, which was an awesome trip. I'm very honored to consider Major General Paul Vallely, who had commanded Special Forces in Afghanistan, as a personal friend. He arranged a speaking event for me. Unfortunately, he was ill at the time, so he couldn't be at the event, but I visited with him at home at his beautiful house that he just built outside of Big Fork. I was with his wife and his grandson and his daughter. I mean, the guy's a real American hero. And on my way out, I got my ticket, and I noticed on my ticket it was stamped pre-cleared. And I'm thinking, what's this about? So I get to the security checkpoint, and the guy says to me, Mr. Cutler, you can leave your jacket on, don't take off your shoes, leave your briefcase in the bag, don't take the liquids out of your thing. I said, why? He said, well, you've been pre-cleared. So I took the guy aside. I said, I got to ask you a couple of questions, and I have my retired federal credentials. I said, I've done a bunch of hearings. The guy said, yeah, I thought you looked familiar because he had seen me apparently on TV. I said, how does this work? He said, it's up to the airline. If they want to put you in for that as a special deal, they can. I said, what do they base it on? He said, well, they check your name if it doesn't show up. And he says, I guess they're hoping that if you like the treatment so much, you'll go ahead and opt to spend $99 to be treated this way every time you fly for a year. I said, but that's not what this is about. This isn't supposed to be a revenue-generating operation. This is supposed to be about keeping weapons and terrorists off of airplanes.
Oh.
This isn't like asking me, do I want to be upgraded to first class? Do I want to have a bulkhead seat? Do I want a window? Do I want a blanket? I mean, so what are they saying? Would you like to bring a bomb on board, Mr. Cutler? It's $99 a year. What in the world are we doing? And the guy shrugged his shoulders. He said to me, you're right, but this is the way it works. Well, on the way back, I didn't get the preferential treatment. And I thought to myself, what kind of background check are we doing? I mean, Snowden went through security with no problem. The guy that shot up the Navy Yard, no problem. Nidal Hassan, no problem. I had a top secret clearance, and we used to joke that it was like visiting the proctologist every 5 years because it was very thorough. You'd sit in a room with one or more investigators. They might question you for 10 hours. They could talk to your neighbors. They could pull up your bank records. They could pull up your phone records. But what background check are we doing for trusted traveler? They run a name that might be a lie. I mean, we're giving people ID in New York City to illegal aliens. Think about that. You have states giving driver's licenses. Better yet, you have this administration with these dreamers giving them ID. And they could be as old as age 31. And guess what the interview is like for the dreamers?
None.
There is no interview. There's no field investigation. And then I listen to people like Charles Krauthammer on Fox News, and I love his life story. He seems like a real mensch, to use the Yiddish Brooklyn term, a real decent guy. He's inspirational. That this guy is paralyzed, but didn't let it stop him, didn't let it keep him from living a full life. He doesn't sound bitter. He's really a role model, and I think he's very bright. But not about everything. And when these people get in front of TV cameras, these so-called journalists and the talking heads, they offer opinions about everything. I mean, I'm willing to bet that Charles Krauthammer would be happy to tell you about how to do brain surgery because he's on TV. He must know. And so he makes these statements. Well, if we have an immigrant who's been living in the United States for 7 or more years and they've been paying their taxes, stop the clock. How do you know how long an illegal alien has been living in the United States? There's no record of an entry that's created when you run the border.
Amen.
There's no face-to-face interview. There's no field investigation. So all you have to do is find out what's the magic number, what's the date that I have to claim I entered prior to qualify. And let me tell you how crazy it is. I was going into Fox News a couple of years ago, and my driver, because they send a limousine, you don't get paid, but they do send a limo, and you have a little snack in the green room, and they treat you very nicely, and you get to get your position out there, which I think is very important to be part of the dialogue. Well, this guy had a very heavy Arabic accent. I said, where are you from? He said, Lebanon. And I said, how long have you been here? He said, I came in 1986 because of President Reagan. I said, and how did that work out? Playing stupid. And he says, well, he said, we really thought that Americans are really stupid. I wanted to follow up like with the old Johnny Carson, Ed McMahon deal, how stupid are we? So if you did the how stupid are we, he said they knew that if they said they had worked on a farm, because that was one of the provisions of the Reagan amnesty, that they would get lawful status. So when he filled out the paperwork, he made sure that he put down that he came here before whatever the magic date was. And he put down that he had worked on a farm. I said, well, what kind of farm work have you done? He said, I've never been on a farm, but we all knew we had to say it if we wanted to get lawful status.
Well, that's what we got today.
That's right. And so, wait a minute, it gets worse. So he said to me that because of that, he was able to bring over all of his 6 brothers or 7 brothers and sisters, all of their spouses, and all of their children. He said, and you know what's really amazing? Just about everybody from his village in Lebanon did the same thing. So he said there are now thousands of people from his village living in the United States, all because they said they worked on a farm. He said, how stupid is that? He said, we can't believe that this superpower that's America, that you people are that stupid. So now we're worried about terrorists getting on airplanes. We're worried about terrorists blowing up parades. We're worried about terrorists shooting up malls. Yet we're admitting people, giving them identity documents. And if you look at what the 9/11 Commission warned about and I'm going to try to read a couple of things. But I want to start out with one fundamental thing. I'm working on a major paper for Front Page Magazine. I write for a bunch of websites. I may as well put it out there, and I'll talk about it a couple times today. But if you folks are interested, please write this down. I have my own personal website, michaelcutler.net, C-U-T-L-E-R, one word, michaelcutler.net. I also write for CAPS Web, Californians for Population Stabilization, capsweb.org. I write for Front Page Magazine, published by the David Horowitz Freedom Center. I write for Progressives for Immigration Reform. See, they're on the left. This isn't a left-right issue. This is an American issue. If you want to find them, it's easy. Just punch in PFIR, Progressives for Immigration Reform. And for the Social Contract, I'm the lead story for their winter edition, their fall edition. They do a quarterly magazine. And I was asked, or I actually suggested it, and they decided to follow my suggestion, that we needed to do a retrospective 14 years after 9/11. Where are we? And one of the things I came up with was this notion that we need to learn from history. And I quoted a leader from the Second World War. I think you'll like the quote. You tell me what you think. When the situation was manageable, it was neglected. And now that it is thoroughly out of hand, we apply too late the remedies which might have effected a cure. There is nothing new in the story. It is as old as the Sibylline books. It falls into that long, dismal catalog of the fruitlessness of experience and the confirmed unteachability of mankind. Want of foresight, unwillingness to act when action would be simple and effective, lack of clear thinking, confusion of counsel until the emergency comes, until self-preservation strikes its jarring gong. These are the features which constitute the endless repetition of history. How's that for a quote?
Who said it?
Sir Winston Churchill, before the House of Commons on May 2nd, 1935, voicing his frustrations and consternations at missed opportunities as the storm clouds that would become the Second World War were gathering on the horizon. George Bernard Shaw put it a bit more succinctly. We learn from history that we learn nothing from history. And
you know, it's funny because you mentioned 9/11, and we do have a broadcast on that date. It's our normally scheduled one. I've already put down in the title that it will be a 9/11 retrospect. So I hope that you will join us on 9/11, Mike.
If I am free, absolutely. I never know what's going to happen on 9/11 because everything is like in a state of flux on that day. But yes, I would love to do that. I will certainly join you at least for part of the program. I'd be honored.
That guy we were talking about, one of the guys we were talking about on that list, Al Sabah or Saeed Al Sabah, whatever. He's also been in trouble. He's on the pedophile list, whatever they call that thing. That's a great job. Number one is you're on the terror list, and you're a sex offender. I mean, boy, that guy's.
Wait a minute. Why doesn't he run for Congress?
Well, I don't know, but they commented he has a perfect attendance record in 3 years.
There you go.
Why miss a day? Why miss a day? But I mean, it's really. I don't know. It baffles me all that you had just said. And I'm sure there's many other little villages that all abandoned themselves, jumped on, and came over here.
Let me tell you something. First of all, I want to make a couple of quick points. If there's a history book about 9/11, it certainly was written, and it's the 9/11 Commission report. In addition to the 9/11 Commission report, there's the 9/11 Commission staff report on terrorist travel. And I provided testimony to the 9/11 Commission. In fact, for the audience, I don't know if they remember this, but 6 months to the day after 9/11, to everybody's horror, it was discovered that two of the dead terrorists, Mohammed Atta, who was the ringleader, and Marwan al-Shehi, had been granted authorization to attend, of all things, flight school 6 months to the day after the attacks. So the whole damn world knew, A, that these two pieces of trash were the hijackers, or among the 19, and they were dead. So if you want to talk about a Charlie Foxtrot, there is your classic Charlie Foxtrot, okay? And what did they do? They held a hearing. I was one of the 4 witnesses called to that hearing. And if you go to the hearing, you can watch the hearing to this day. It's permanently posted on C-SPAN. And if you listen to the statements made by the politicians, if you listen to what the then Commissioner of Immigration had to say, if you listen to the promises and the indignation, not one of those promises has been kept. And here we are now, 13 years after that hearing. Not one of the promises has been kept. And meanwhile, we see what's going on in the Middle East. We see that ISIS is on the move. They just captured another city. They just captured more people. God forbid we will see more beheadings. And we're sitting here and the band played on. And you have a president who's now blaming the military for not giving him a coherent plan, which I cannot possibly imagine. In fact, former generals who are familiar with the situation say, no, he's been given advice and he refuses to act. How in the world are you safe when you have millions of people living in your country whose identities are unknown and unknowable? We're bringing in refugees. I'm Jewish. I was named for my grandmother who perished in the Holocaust. Back in college, when I went to Brooklyn College, I went to Washington as a B'nai B'rith chapter president to ask then-President Lyndon Johnson to convince the Russians to let people out of the Soviet Union to come to America or go to any country that would have them so that they could practice religious freedom. Whether they were Jews, whether they were other religious minorities, we didn't care. It was about bringing in people who needed to be allowed to be free. I can tell you it was an honor for me as an immigration inspector, which is how I began my career with the old Immigration and Naturalization Service, the INS. It was a privilege to sit in that little booth at Kennedy Airport and admit refugees into the United States. These people came in, they kissed the floor, they kissed me, some were laughing, some were crying. It was as emotional for me as it was for them. And I was a big fan, and I was happy to admit them because I felt that the circle had gone completely around. When I was in college, we asked the U.S. government to approach the Russians let people out, and I got the privilege of admitting them. So I'm a fan of asylum, however, and underline however in red. We must not allow people into the country who are not effectively screened. Not today in particular, when we know that the goal of the terrorists is to come to America and attack us. And when we talk about learning from history, there was a history book that was written about 9/11, and it's those reports. And when they talked about what was found in the bin Laden compound when our Navy SEALs took that piece of trash out and blew them away, and I hope the virgins he got were smelly and ugly. What did they find in the compound? Huh?
They were Catholic nuns.
Yes, there you go. Someone said that to me this morning early. That's really good. Guns with nuns. I like that. But my point is, he had the copy of the 9/11 Commission report in his compound. He had a copy of an application for United States citizenship. I don't think he was planning to become a citizen, but I'm sure that he was looking at the potential of getting his minions into the United States and embedding them by immigration fraud, by lying. So we're having a hearing today in Washington because TSA screwed up. But yet everyone is ignoring the obvious. We have had terrorists since 9/11 come to the United States, be lawfully admitted, not by running the Mexican border, by coming through ports of entry, getting political asylum, getting green cards, getting citizenship. Look at this guy, Faisal Shahzad, the Times Square bomber. Ray Kelly, New York City Police Commissioner back in 2010 when this deal went down. Kelly was previously the Commissioner of U.S. Customs. He described Faisal Shahzad as a classic example of a homegrown terrorist. In some newspapers, they use the term homegrown sleeper, which is an oxymoron. Sleepers are not American citizens. Sleepers are foreign nationals who come to this country one way or the other and wait for that phone call or the tap on the shoulder telling them that tomorrow's the day. But Faisal Shahzad came here as a 20-year-old Pakistani on a student visa. How in God's green earth could anybody, even somebody ignorant, somebody not familiar with law enforcement, claim that somebody who comes here as a 20-year-old adult is homegrown? In what home was he grown? And yet you had Ray Kelly, because this was the narrative. We must never associate immigration with terrorism. When the Republicans jump up and down about Obama, they always make the same point. But what do they say? Well, he's violating the Constitution. well, he's violating the rule of law. Yeah, and most people don't care. They yawn. How many people drive around with radar detectors? You were a cop, Annie. How many people have radar detectors on their dashboard? Do you think they give a rat's tail about rule of law? See,
No.
the real argument that's the showstopper that you're not going to hear the Republicans use, because they are ecstatic that Obama's doing what he's doing. They are thrilled to death. Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, they are all happier than a clam because, number one, it gives them a campaign issue to jump up and down and scream about. And number two, it opens the floodgates to bring in all the cheap labor, all of the tourists, all of the foreign students, all the money that goes with all of that. So they're happy, and they get to complain about it. They get to have their cake and eat it, too. So what's the showstopper that would stop everyone dead in their tracks that they will never say? What Obama is doing is undermining national security. And let me prove it to you. There's a quote. This is in the preface of the 9/11 Commission staff report on terrorist travel. The very first word you read after the index that tells you what's in the report, here's the words. It is perhaps obvious to state that terrorists cannot plan and carry out attacks in the United States if they are unable to enter the country. Yet prior to September 11, while there were efforts to enhance border security, no agency of the U.S. government thought of border security as a tool in the counterterrorism arsenal. Indeed, even after 19 hijackers demonstrated the relative ease of obtaining a U.S. visa and gaining admission into the United States, border security still is not considered a cornerstone of national security policy. We believe, for reasons we discuss on the following pages, that it must be made one. So understand from square one what we're talking about. And I said to Lou Barletta, the former mayor of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, who's now a member of Congress, sits on the Homeland Security Committee. We've become good friends. I testified for him when, as mayor of Hazleton, he enacted the nation's first local immigration ordinances to go after people who provide housing or jobs to illegals in response to a Dominican drug gang that set up shop in his quiet community, and suddenly he had homicides where they hadn't had a single murder in many, many years. Now, when he went to the Bush administration in Washington, they said, we'd love to help you, Mayor, but we can't. But here's a mug with a badge on it. I kid you not. He and I went to Florida together, did a town hall meeting that was televised by C-SPAN. It's also permanently available. And Lou talks about that. So I said to Lou one day, every time you go to a hearing as a member of Congress, please, Lou, I want you to read parts of this into the record. I want you to use it in questioning Jay Johnson and all these others. And you know what? He's been doing it. And I've just written some articles for Front Page and for CAPS, Californians for Population Stabilization. The Social Contract will have this. Links to where Lou pointedly asks some of these questions. And Jay Johnson does a tap dance.
Of course he's going to tap dance. You know, there's a lot of comments that are going up in the chat room, and you know, our elected officials are not acting on anything. Our president is not acting on anything. Department of Homeland Security is deliberately backing off, and a lot of people are asking, well, why are we even talking about it? Because it's falling on deaf ears. By you having this gentleman read parts of the 9/11 report into congressional record, that's doing something. We have over here a resettlement community that we are battling, and I'm sure you're aware of this resettlement program that's been on the books since 1975. Now they're using it to get the Somali and Syrian communities to accept these resettlements, and the money that goes behind it. And here in South Carolina, we're battling it.
I know,
here
it's
in South
Spartanburg.
Carolina,
It's Spartanburg.
Greenville, right. And I was on the phone extensively with Christina Jeffrey, who's spearheading that battle. And she
Please tell us she owes me
mayor,
a phone call. When you speak to Christina, we're friends, tell us she owes me a phone call. But yes.
Well, she said she was going to try to call in if she could to the show today. Something else that we have doing is there's 26 attorney generals, 26 states that are suing the Obama administration, the Department of Homeland Security, for failing to enforce immigration laws. And recently, in February, there was a federal judge that stopped the DAPA program. He said, no, you cannot ignore
And understand that the administration even lied because they told that judge in Texas that they had processed none of the DAPA cases, and it turned out that they had.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lawless administration. I wrote an article for Front Page Magazine about the Syrian resettlement program in Detroit. Now, I want everyone to think about this. Detroit, Michigan is a failed, you heard of failed states? Well, Detroit, Michigan is a failed city. My son, who's an engineer, had to go to Detroit one day to have a meeting. He was meeting with some car makers. He took a wrong turn and found himself in a hellhole. And the police saw him, and some guys saw him, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And my son said, I'm lost. And the guy said to him, "Just keep going. Run the lights, man. Just get out of here." He said, "You're not safe here." He said, "Bullets are flying everywhere here." And some cop car pulls up and said to him, "I don't care if you run every light between here and the airport. Just get out of here." So this is the situation that we see in Detroit. And what does the governor of Detroit say?
Governor?
The governor of Detroit, who's supposedly a Republican.
Governor, or do you mean mayor?
No, the governor of Michigan, rather. I'm sorry. The governor of Michigan
wants
wants to work with the mayor to bring in 50,000 Syrian refugees to revitalize the economy. The governor created something called the Michigan Bureau for New Americans, or something in that order.
Department of New Americans.
So now understand something. What happened to the old Americans? We are being thrown into the pile of junk to be cleaned up with last week's trash. We are destroying the middle class by displacing American high-tech workers so that we can bring in cheap labor, so that Bill Gates can make even more money, because when you're worth tens of billions of dollars, God only knows what you need is more money. I mean, I don't know how Mr. Gates is able to buy hamburger meat, right? He went into Africa, and everyone is telling me, oh, he's a philanthropist. Well, if you want to have an interesting experience, folks, and do this while we're on the air, maybe you want to call in, why don't you punch in Microsoft in Africa and see what comes up? It's eye-opening. 2 years ago, they started putting in TV and all kinds of electronic infrastructure. This is about finding new markets for his crap. That's what this is about. Do you remember when Windows would come out, Windows 98, Windows 2, Windows 15, Windows .3, whatever, silly nonsense. And people would wait online like they were waiting for the Holy Grail. Well, no one's doing it anymore. They look at their computer, it's an appliance. Can I do my mail? Can I do Facebook? Can I do whatever? Word processing? That's all I need. So he understands that the shine is off. So he needs new people to buy his stuff, and he wants cheaper places to manufacture his stuff. So he goes to Africa. He's like Locust. And so you have Bill Gates doing this, and I've said to people that if you really think that Gates is a philanthropist, then you really believe that the guy that puts cheese on a mousetrap is trying to feed hungry mice.
How does
that work for you, Annie?
You guys, that DIFA, what is that?
Huh?
ADAPA, what is that?
It's for the parents of the DACA, the Deferred Action Children. Now, let me tell you how much of a lie you're dealing with here. And that's what I love about Annie's show, that we have enough time to get into some of the issues. I wrote an article for Fox News Latino 2 days after the president stood in the Rose Garden and said, well, Congress has failed to act. So let's back up and think about Congress failing to act. I was with Senator Jeff Sessions, Congressman Louis Gohmert, John Fleming, and some other people, Rick Perry. I was in Florida with the David Horowitz Freedom Center. I'm very proud to be one of their columnists. I have an article out today, in fact, contrasting the reaction of Congress to the disclosures about TSA with what passes as business as usual where immigration's concerned. So we talked about this nonsense. Jeff Sessions, and by the way, is the guy I wish would run for president. I told him if he would run for president, I would volunteer to work 23 out of 24 hours a day to get him elected. Because these other politicians are lying through their teeth. And so you've got the president saying Congress failed to act. And Jeff Sessions went off about that, as did Louis Gohmert, as did I. Because, you see, voting no is not a failure to act. Now, I remember something vaguely in a newspaper account from a number of years ago about a state legislator somewhere in some hellhole. it might have been Illinois. I don't know. Well, it's not really a hellhole, but their politicians leave a lot to be desired. And there was this member of the state legislative body who voted present, I think. I don't know, whatever became of that guy. Oh, it was Obama. That's right. The guy that complains about the failure to act, who thinks it's appropriate to vote present. Would you like vanilla or chocolate? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Really? So that he doesn't go on record, so that nobody won't dislike what he's doing, because after all, he's got a community to organize. And now the community that he's organizing has over 300 million people in it. So you have a president saying Congress failed to act. Voting no is not a failure to act. When a parent says to the kid that refused to do his term paper, you're not getting the keys to the family car until you do your term paper, is that parent failing to act? You see, the legislation was terrible. And it was based on a lie that was based on another lie, because they use buzzwords. And that's another article that I just wrote for Front Page Magazine, that we have politicians, and I will tell you, Ted Cruz is one of them, Marco Rubio, all of them. Don't even get me going on Hillary Clinton, and certainly don't get me going on O'Malley, because they're all saying the same garbage. They all have campaigns that could be put on bumper stickers that are meaningless. First, secure the border. What border? We'll put the aliens on the back of the line. Back of the line to what, where, and what can they do when they're online? I mean, think of all these phrases. So what I did for this article that's forthcoming at Front Page Magazine, and I want you guys to all go out and read it and pass it along, because it shows you the lies and the swindle that these bums are doing to us from both parties. The parties are so bad, I've given them new names. I now call them the repugnant cans and the Democrats. How does that work for you?
That does pretty much work. You're talking about, Obama saying that Congress isn't acting, and Congress is saying Obama isn't acting. Obama is not acting because he's not enforcing any of the laws.
No, Obama is acting, and that comes to the heart of my point that I was getting to. So he invoked prosecutorial discretion. That's what he claimed. You are a cop. Tell me I'm wrong, Annie. Prosecutorial discretion is a police officer with a radar gun who sees someone coming by 8 miles over the speed limit on an empty road. The weather conditions are ideal. The car looks nice and well maintained, not driving erratically, just going 8 miles over the limit, and the cop says, I'm not going to stop that person. Is that legitimate?
That's legitimate.
Sure, because the person is not a threat to anybody, and while by letter of law there's a violation taking place, it's not endangering anyone, and that cop knows, you know what, if I sit here, within 5 minutes, some yo-yo is going to come through here at 90 miles an hour, and that's the guy I want. Some guy is going to come here with a car with flapping fenders and bald tires. That's the guy I want. Some guy's going to come down here swerving because he's drunk out of his skull. That's the guy I want. If I stop the woman going 8 miles an hour over the limit, I'm just going to waste time, aggravate her for no good reason, and nobody wins. Is that an accurate description about the mindset? Is it fair?
It is, and you have blatant disregard for the law. They released threat level 1, illegal immigrants.
But let me build my case. Just give me 1 second to build my case. So my point is that's legitimate prosecutorial discretion. So what action do you take when you're using prosecutorial discretion? How much time do you spend on the person that you're ignoring because the person doesn't pose a threat?
You spend 0 time.
That's right. Did Obama spend 0 time on these kids, so-called?
All right.
No.
You've got your...
He brought them in to process them with resources he doesn't have. He actually needed to get an appropriation of money to pay. Is that still prosecutorial discretion? Think about it, Annie. That's item number 1. Item number 2. You see my point? So it's really not prosecutorial discretion. Now, we do have, under the law, the authority in select cases, on a case-by-case basis, the authority to give an alien who's in the country the authority to stay here and even work if there are emergency situations. I'll give you an example, okay? A family comes here, I don't care if they're from Mexico, England, or Japan. The child is hit by a car and the kid's in a coma. Are we going to tell those people, your visa expires next week, leave? Do you
No,
think we
that's
should do that?
That's
Right.
prosecutorial
And
discretion.
the father says, but look, how am I supposed to pay for my baby? Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll give you employment authorization as long as you come in every 2 months with a note from the doctor with updates on the condition of your child. Is that reasonable?
That is reasonable.
Okay.
But that's
and
not
we
what's
do that.
happening.
And we do
Yeah.
that frequently. Or you have people visiting and their grandmother has a stroke and they don't want to leave her because the doctors tell them it's touch and go. But they're not wealthy people. They're working class people. And they say, gee whiz, how are we supposed to stay here? And the government says, you know what, given the emergency, given the fact that this old woman is dying and she's so important to you, we'll give you permission to work. Is that reasonable? I think it is. It's humanitarian. But we're processing them as individuals. There's a face-to-face interview. I did those interviews, by the way. It's done by the enforcement folks. And sometimes the interview could take 3 hours. And you really sit with them, and you review the material, and you might even call up the doctor, or if need be, you'd go to the doctor's office and talk to the doctor directly. Why? To make certain that they're telling the truth. And if the doctor says, yes, here's the woman's medical charts, you're free to review them because you have to make a decision about the woman's son and daughter. Fine. And we walk out and we say, you know what, this is really a situation, let's do the right thing. I don't think any American would have a problem with that. Am I right or wrong?
No, you're completely right, but are there any interviews happening today? I don't think so.
No, there isn't a single interview, and all that they're doing is saying to them, fill out the paperwork, and sight unseen, they have given hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens permission to stay and work and get more documentation. And what are we basing it on? They're undocumented, right? That means they have no official identity documents. So they're going to lie about who they are. You have people that are on wanted lists, fugitives, lying about their identities to get new identities. When we arrested bad guys, what do we always notice about bad guys? How many false IDs do they use?
Oh.
We had extension sheets on rap sheets. Why? Because they use change in name the way a chameleon uses changes in coloration to hide in plain sight. True or false?
That's exactly what I was trying to say. We don't even check whether or not they're using their real name.
Because you have no way of doing it without a field investigation.
Not even checking to say if they're coming from the country that they claim to be coming from.
That's right.
And that's our biggest problem. We've got OTMs, other than Mexicans, claiming to be from Mexico or Guatemala or Nicaragua because they're coming in from Pakistan, India, Saudi Arabia.
Okay, let me read something.
Let
me read something to you. This is again from that 9/11 Commission staff report on terrorist travel. This is the World Trade Center bombing. February 1993, three terrorists who were involved with the first World Trade Center bombing reportedly traveled on Saudi passports containing an indicator, of possible terrorist affiliation. Three of the 9/11 hijackers also had passports containing the same possible indicator. In addition, Ramzi Youssef, the mastermind of the attack, and Ahmed Ajaj, who was able to direct aspects of the attack despite being in prison for using an altered passport, traveled under aliases using fraudulent documents, plural. The two of them were found to possess 5 passports as well as numerous documents supporting all of their aliases. Okay? So we know that this is the threat. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So then they said this. Once terrorists had entered the United States, their next challenge was to find a way to remain here. Their primary method was immigration fraud. For example, Youssef and Ajaj concocted bogus political asylum stories when they arrived in the United States. Mahmoud Abu Alima, involved in both the World Trade Center and landmark plots, received temporary residence under the Seasonal Agriculture Worker Program after falsely claiming that he picked beans in Florida. Mohammed Salome, who rented the truck used in the bombing, overstayed his tourist visa. He then applied for permanent residency under the Agricultural Worker Program, but was rejected. Ayad Mohammed Ismail, who drove the van containing the bomb, took English language classes at Wichita State University in Kansas on a student visa. After he dropped out, he remained in the United States out of status. Then we have this on page 61. In July 2001, the CIA warned of a possible link between human smugglers and terrorist groups, including Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Egyptian Islamic Jihad. Indeed, there is evidence to suggest that since 1999, human smugglers have facilitated the travel of terrorists associated with more than a dozen extremist groups. With their global reach and connections to fraudulent document vendors and corrupt government officials, human smugglers clearly have the credentials necessary to aid terrorist travel. And we're still debating whether we need to secure our borders?
No, prior to 9/11, and I cannot find the article, I was sitting in a doctor's office, and I was reading a back issue. It was either Newsweek or Time, one of those magazines. And in there, they were discussing illegal immigration, and they was talking specifically about the southern border. And they said the total number of illegal immigrants coming over was disproportionate. You had a lot of OTMs that were identifying them from coming from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and saying that they were blending in as if they were from Mexico. This was pre-9/11 in a major news media publication. That article disappeared, and I have been looking for it for years now, and I cannot find it.
It's like 1984 where they had the book burnings and they would rewrite the history books.
Exactly. Now, this was underneath, this was, I'm trying to remember who was president back at the time.
What year was this?
This was at the start of the Bush administration, just prior to 9/11.
But remember, Bush had the agenda of opening up the borders because he wanted this whole thing with the North American partnership.
Right. So now we have Obama in the office, and now it's like a complete free flow. New York Post recently had an article saying that illegal immigration has been dropping. Why? Because we now have this resettlement program that they've put into full gear. This is not even full gear. This is a runaway. This is a runaway train wreck. And these resettlement organizations, these non-government entities that are bringing in these other immigrants, it's a legal way to bring in an illegal immigrant. It's a legal way to bring in a terrorist.
That's right. And in fact, there was an amazing interview, and again, you can watch it with Lou Barletta, who I love. He's a role model for Congress, and I'm so proud to call him a personal friend. When I testified before a Senate hearing 2 years ago, and he found I was going to be in D.C., he hosted lunch for myself, my wife, and my youngest son at the Capitol Hill Club. And my son, who's a college kid, had a great first year as an engineering student, and he has Asperger's because of early intervention, which, by the way, we are now defunding so that we can pay more in-state, we can give more illegal aliens in-state tuition. I mean, the lunacy of what we're doing to our own children. We're eating our own. But Lou questioned Johnson, and he said to Johnson, why is it that we're always focused on what's good for the immigrant and never what's good for Americans? It's not fair. And Johnson says, well, if you go into all these restaurants, you see all these undocumented immigrants. And my goal is to make them documented. And I'm sitting there watching this video going nuts. But I was an agent. You know what the solution for illegal, that's what this is, not undocumented, uninspected. That was the term we used, EWI, entry without inspection. They're trespassers. Do you know what was expected of me if you went into a restaurant and saw illegal aliens? You think it was to give them permission to work or to put handcuffs on them?
Handcuff.
Handcuff. That's the solution. Chuck Schumer goes out there and has a news conference, hard to imagine. The most dangerous place in America is to get between Chuck and a camera. And he goes out there, and what does he say? You have people trespassing on the landmarks of the United States because the penalty isn't big enough. It's only a couple of months in jail in New York City. He said this needs to be a federal crime where you go to jail for 5 years if you trespass. So wait a minute. According to Chuck, if you climb the cables at the Brooklyn Bridge to get an artsy photograph of the Statue of Liberty, you need to spend half a decade in a cage. Think about that. But if you trespass on America in the middle of the night, you need to be given a certificate of citizenship. The lack of mouth-ear coordination is stunning. His own ears don't hear the crap that he spews out of his own mouth. And it's infuriating, because here we see where this is about national security. Here's another great quote. Terrorists in the 1990s, as well as the September 11th hijackers, needed to find a way to stay in or embed themselves in the United States if their operational plans were to come to fruition. As already discussed, this could be accomplished legally by marrying an American citizen, achieving temporary worker status, or applying for asylum after entering. In many cases, the act of filing for an immigration benefit sufficed to permit the alien to remain in the country until the petition was adjudicated. Terrorists were free to conduct surveillance, coordinate operations, obtain and receive funding, go to school and learn English, make contacts in the United States, acquire necessary materials, and execute an attack. This is a government report paid for by government funding, published by the government printing office. This isn't some supermarket tabloid. And when I had an argument with a producer at 60 Minutes who had been behind this story that Leslie Stahl did with Jay Johnson, and instead of throwing cannonballs, threw wiffle balls at Johnson, I left a message for this guy over at 60 Minutes. And it was funny because he calls me back when I happen to be in Montana. And when I answered the phone, he said, my name is Richard so-and-so. And I said, well, Richard, I'm sure that by now you've checked into who I am. He said, no, I don't know who you are, but you called me on my private number, so I thought I should call you. This guy's a journalist. He's probably making hundreds of thousands a year, according to my friends in the industry. You called me back because I called you on your private line. I know how to manipulate the system. I have numbers, internal numbers inside 60 Minutes and all the other news organizations. I never throw out a phone number, my old habits as an agent. And I dialed around till I finally got him. But you would have thought, and in my message, I told him what my website was. I told him who I was. And he's simply calling me back. And I said to him, why in the world didn't Leslie ask him how you protect America when you give identity documents to people whose identities are unverifiable, who snuck into the country? Why are you buying more drones when they just did a study that showed the drones are worthless? They couldn't attribute a single arrest to those drones that cost 4 times as much as a helicopter with agents on board. I'd much rather put manned choppers up than drones. And he said to me, what's this emphasis on immigration? Do you really think that people that want to wash our dishes and do our laundry and put roofs on our house are going to do anything to hurt us? They want us to pay them. And I said to him, I don't know how big your house is, or how big your lawn is that you think we need all those people to mow lawns. I said, do you know that the country that sends us more legal immigrants than any other country is China? That we have over 1 million foreign students in the United States studying all sorts of courses, and China sends us more students than anybody else, that the Saudis are on the top 10 list of schools of countries that send us their students, that we're training Iranians in nuclear technology. I said, do you understand the problem of terrorism? And he said to me, oh, you don't really think there's a link. So I read him what I just read you, and he said, where did that crap come from? And I said, the 9/11 Commission staff reports. I said, don't you get it? And his answer was, my other phone's ringing.
It is absolutely amazing because now, with them not screening people, the government had put into place these programs to help these illegal immigrants become settled here in the United States. I mean, busloads of them were just being dropped off in cities. And then, of course, we get George Soros right smack in the middle. He sunk $8 million into these community programs. And a lot of these community programs have direct links, not just back to George Soros, but to ACORN, to SEIU. It just makes no sense.
I debated the SEIU. I like the trade unions, although they're mobbed up sometimes. Not all of them. I don't want to cast a broad net that way. But SEIU is not a union. It's a subversive organization. I've debated them. They go far beyond the scope of what unions are supposed to be doing. But here's another good one while we talk about the TSA and the no-fly list. You ready for this one?
Go ahead.
This is not good news for the Attorney General, Holder, that he was likely hoping for. A public memorandum issued on Thursday, this is back in 2012, by the Department of Justice Inspector General indicates that in July 2012, the U.S. Marshal Service, the federal law enforcement agency of the Department of Justice, was unable to locate 2 known or suspected terrorists participating in the Witness Protection Program, which I call the Witless Protection Program. Through its investigative efforts, the Inspector General writes that the agency concluded that one individual was, and the other individual was believed to be, residing outside the United States. We found that the department did not definitively know how many known or suspected terrorists were admitted into the Witness Security Program. And they go on and talk about the fact that the department is continuing to review more than 18,000 WITSEC case files to determine if there are other terrorists who've been admitted. And they also noted that none of the names that these witnesses were given, because they get new names, were submitted to the TSA to put on the no-fly list.
That's scary. And again, here we come up with the TSA. Now, you had mentioned the hearings that were going on in the Senate. Just before we went on air, the Senate, that hearing had been evacuated because of a bomb threat. Shortly after that, the White House press briefing room was evacuated also for a bomb threat. TSA hearing, bomb threat, terrorist. Do you think there's any connection here?
God only knows. And look, when you look at Johnson, who is the chairman of the Senate Intelligence, the Senate Homeland Security Committee, I tried to talk to him because he was at that event in Florida. Did not want to hear anything I had to say about immigration. He said to me, I'm a businessman and I need empirical evidence. I said, I have it. He said, well, that's great. Good to talk to you. And he walked away.
You know, it's really, really scary. You know, we have our friend Vito Esposito in the chat room, and he wrote that we are reliving the Declaration of Independence, meaning the events that led up to it and why it was authored. And it may be time to abolish and alter our government and start again. And I think, Mike, I think a lot of hardcore Americans are looking at it because we're being invaded. This is an all-out and out invasion. And
orchestrated by the people that we elected to represent us.
All right, Sue, did you want to add something? I thought I heard Sue in the background.
No, I'm just
enjoying
the conversation.
All right. Sue actually happens to live on the border in New Mexico, and she sees this happening firsthand every day.
I live on the border here in New York. I live 10 miles from Kennedy Airport.
And we all live on the border.
That's right, and that's the
issue. A border state.
That's the issue. There's another story. ABC News reported last year the Department of Homeland Security has lost track of more than 6,000 foreign nationals who entered the United States on student visas, overstayed their welcome, and essentially vanished, exploiting a security gap supposed to be fixed after the September 11th attacks. Okay? And these are specifically 6,000 students who come from countries or for other reasons are of particular concern. Because altogether, the total number of students was 58,000 that have overstayed and we don't know where they are. But 6,000 were of particular concern. And just think what 19 did to us on 9/11 and think back to that hearing where I testified.
Yeah, and now if you take back 2 years ago, David Govets reported that the military was hiring people from Saudi Arabia. They were coming onto the base. They would walk on the base and then disappear, and no one knows where these Saudi Arabian Arabs went. I recently had Van Hip on the show. He has a new book out, The New Terrorism, and we, according to the 9/11 Commission report, said we have to start scanning all the cargo coming in. And what he wrote in his book was only 2% of the cargo is scanned. It should have been 100% as of 2 years ago. These are all things, and it is the perfect storm gathering, and unless we wake up and smell the coffee and make those in government do what they're supposed to do, enforce the laws and kick out the illegal immigrants, round them up, find them. And I'm sorry, if you came over here when you were a child, there is a legal way for you to re-enter. You leave, you go back to your home country, and you re-enter legally.
But look, right, and when they talk about putting them on the back of the line to what? Citizenship? They don't want citizenship, and once they get into that program, they get immediate employment authorization. But look, all this emphasis on the Mexican border, okay? I want to read something else. This is contained on page 54 under the title 3.2, Terrorist Travel Tactics by Plot. Catch this. Although there is evidence that some land and sea border entries of terrorists without inspection, and there's the official term, not undocumented, without inspection occurred, these conspirators mainly subverted the legal entry system by entering at, fill in the blank, airports. In so doing, they relied on a wide variety of fraudulent documents, on aliases, and on government corruption. because terrorist operations were not suicide missions in the early to mid-1990s. Once in the United States, terrorists and their supporters tried to get legal immigration status that would permit them to remain here primarily by committing serial or repeated immigration fraud, by claiming political asylum, by marrying Americans. Many of these tactics would remain largely unchanged and undetected throughout the 1990s and up to the 9/11 attack. Again, this is not a supermarket tabloid, folks. This is the report written by the 9/11 Commission staff, was paid for and printed by the United States government. Let me continue. Thus, abuse of the immigration system and a lack of interior immigration enforcement, not the border, the interior, were unwittingly working together to support terrorist activity. It would remain largely unknown since no agency of the U.S. government analyzed terrorist travel patterns until after 9/11. This lack of attention meant that critical opportunities to disrupt terrorist travel and therefore deadly terrorist operations were missed. Well, they know, and they're doing exactly the opposite. We have rolled out the red carpet for people who may well want to kill us.
Absolutely. And now you have this expansion of the H-1B visas. Now, 250 people employed by Walt Disney are losing their jobs. And the biggest insult is they have to train these immigrant replacements. So why do you have to enter any longer illegally? You're entering legally. We have done everything. Everything.
And now look at
possible.
this one. Here's another one. Here's another one. I want to give your audience hard facts, not just Mike Cutler's opinions, for whatever they're worth. And yes, I've been an expert witness in trials, which means I'm allowed to have opinions in a courtroom, which is unusual. I want you to hear from the other officials. There was a hearing that Peter King conducted, and this was on March 21st, 2012. And the topic of the hearing was Iran, Hezbollah, and the threat to the homeland. And here's a statement from Peter King. As Iran moves closer to nuclear weapons and there is increasing concern over war between Iran and Israel, we must also focus on Iran's secret operatives and their number one terrorist proxy force, Hezbollah, which we know is in America, said Representative Peter King at a Wednesday hearing of his committee. The hearing, which featured former government officials and the Director of Intelligence and Analysis for the New York City Police Department, follows a foiled plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in Washington, and testimony by the Director of National Intelligence, Director James Clapper, in January, stated that Iran's leaders are more willing to conduct an attack inside the United States in response to a real or perceived U.S. action against that regime. So what they're saying is they're here and they are prepared that if we go after their nuclear program, they're going to be blowing stuff up in our country, and their people are now here, inside our country.
Mr. Cutler, if I can ask you, have you recently gone down to the U.S.-Mexican border?
Recently. I've been there within the last 3 or 4 years. 5 years.
Okay. I want you to know what's going on in the border is very, very scary. Grenades are being used, helicopters. We just had one that had shot down. I also speak to patrol agents. I'm very aware of what's going on. Okay, and it seems to me your focus is a lot on the interior and, our ports east-west. But I want to emphasize what is going on the Mexican border.
Oh, it's a disaster.
The ice can't be taken off.
No, listen, there's a reason I'm doing that. Because, you see, the real strategy, we can't make the Mexican border airtight. But what we can do, and I know what we used to try to do, is go after the people, because most of the people who run the border, including the drug traffickers. By the way, do you know what border state was where the greatest amount of Mexican heroin was seized last year?
Just off my head, no, but I know a lot coming through my state.
Where are you?
I'm in New Mexico.
Okay, so what border state do you think they grabbed the great bulk of the Mexican heroin? DEA.
Arizona, I'd say.
New York.
New York, okay.
I spent half my career. I spent almost.
border.
Wait, I spent almost 4 years with the Unified Intelligence Division of DEA. I was the first INS agent assigned there. And I did a compilation of arrest statistics, and it was one of those deals of be careful what you ask for. This was 1989. And in fact, it was the year that I lost a very close friend of DEA, Everett Hatcher, who was killed in Staten Island by an Italian mobster. But
Yeah, I remember Terry.
I'm sorry?
I remember Terry, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Hatcher was something else. But so anyway, I said to my bosses, I'd like to get a copy of the arrest statistics. And in those days, they didn't email you a spreadsheet. They physically gave you the boxes with the reports. I came to work a week later, and there were boxes everywhere. It took me 3 months to dig out of the boxes with a handheld calculator, and I was astonished because I found it back then, 1989. 60%, 60% of the people we were arresting at the DEA task force were foreign-born. In New York.
Yeah,
So
but
my point is this. It's impacting every state. You see, people are selfish. And when people in New York or Chicago or North Carolina or Tennessee hear about what's happening in New Mexico, I'll be honest with you. They shrug their shoulders. I got a phone call from a reporter about a year and a half after 9/11 because there was a plot to blow up a mall in Ohio by some Somalis. And this imbecile of a reporter called me up, and he said to me, Mr. Cutler, I think he was with Associated Press or whatever the devil he was with. And he said to me, he said, they blew up New York, but that's New York. I live in Ohio. But this is the mall where my wife takes my kids, and there was almost an attack here. This is getting serious. And I'll spare you the language. And I said to him, you worthless blankety, 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 blank. I said, I am a New Yorker.
okay.
And he didn't know what to say. So let me just finish my thought.
Okay.
I want people to understand that the failures on the Mexican border, the failures on the Canadian border, the people that stow away on the ships, the people that are coming in through the airports, the drugs that are coming in through seaports. I was a Marine intelligence officer for immigration in New York for a bunch of years. All of these pose an immediate, clear threat to national security and the lives of Americans. I want to move away from the border because we hear it at every damn debate. I just heard Ted Cruz up there pounding away, and he must have used the word finally 10 times. The next president must finally secure the Mexican border, finally. And the audience went nuts. You would have thought they just handed each person in that audience a key to a shiny new red Ferrari. This isn't just about the Mexican border. Look, here's my analogy. Do we need to make that border secure? You're damn right we do. But the Mexican border is no different from a wing on an airplane. Without the wing, the airplane absolutely will not fly, but a wing by itself goes nowhere. And that was why I wrote a commentary for Front Page Magazine. I gave it the title, Border Security and the Immigration Colander. We're being told by Ted Cruz and Rubio and Rand Paul and all the other liars and thieves who want to be public officials that once we secure the Mexican border, we can give millions of people identity documents and the world's going to be fine. No, it won't be fine. And it's not just the Mexican border. And their idea of securing a Mexican border, have you read the language in the law that they proposed?
No, I haven't
I
seen it.
know
Have you
probably
read?
more
No.
than you do about
This
it.
is a yes or no question. Have you read the language of the law?
Have you?
Yes, absolutely, and I'm furious. They want 90% operational control over a period of, I think, 7 years in high-traffic areas. What does that mean? Define a high-traffic area. And what happens when the smugglers know that the Border Patrol has shifted so they move to a new place? How quickly will they respond? What they should be talking about is locking down the border, period. No equivocation. We went to the moon in less time than they want to spend on partially, sort of, kind of, a little bit securing high-traffic areas. This isn't the America that I was born into as a child. We've gone from can't do to can do with a BS explanation and excuse, and I raised my children to believe that an excuse is the opposite of success. We didn't sort of build the Panama Canal. We didn't sort of build atom bombs. We didn't sort of land men on the moon. We didn't sort of break the sound barrier in October of 47 with the X-1 with Chuck Yeager at the controls. God damn it, we got the mission done, period. If we really wanted that border secure, it ought to be so secure that a mosquito can't get across, but it won't matter because all that would happen is the action would move to someplace else. The bulk of the cocaine initially, you may not know this, wasn't coming through Mexico but through Florida. Miami Vice, that great TV series, was all because of the Colombian speedboats. So when we started to intercept the speedboats, we put the Navy out there, we put ships out there, we put airplanes out there, we put the Coast Guard out there. They simply moved the action. We were doing surveillance on Roosevelt Avenue here in New York City, and Annie knows about this. Roosevelt Avenue is drug central. When I went to Minnesota, I did ride-alongs with the sheriffs, and they said, could you imagine we have 3 money wire services the Somalians are using? They just opened the 3rd one, and it was a big deal. Do you know how many money wire services are on Roosevelt Avenue on the side streets? Hundreds. That's how big this business is. Hundreds of money wire services, remitters, gold buying services. Why didn't they have gold buying services in poor neighborhoods? Because what people do is they buy gold. That helps them to move tons of money in a small package. If you have to move hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars and all you have are $100 bills, you're talking about a huge amount of space. When you can convert that to diamonds or gold, you can move in with a small package. That's what this is all about. That's the magnitude of the problem. And 20 years ago, Roosevelt Avenue was run by the Colombians. Now it's run by the Mexicans because the business shifted from Miami to Mexico because of pressure. If you tighten up on Mexico, I guarantee you there'll be another way. What they'll probably do is hire ships to go into the major ports like Port Elizabeth and Port Los Angeles. This is a balloon. If you squeeze one end, it's going to bulge somewhere else. You understand my point?
So in the meantime, because it'll just move to another place, we don't really focus on the border.
No, you're missing my point.
Please let me finish first.
Sure.
And, I want you to tell me why on the Mexican border we are seeing grenades used. Why we are seeing missile launchers used.
Why not?
What is the threat of ISIS?
Can you tell me why we shouldn't? What are we doing to stop it?
Exactly.
This isn't either or. You're missing my point. You have to attack everything simultaneously. I want the border so airtight that a mosquito can't get across tomorrow. But that by itself will do bupkis. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Should we do that? Yes. But that's one of many things we need to do.
I agree with what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. It just seemed like you were kind of focusing quite a lot on other areas and not all of them.
No. What I'm saying is all the politicians are willing to talk about is this mythical secure the Mexican border lie. And everyone who says it is a liar. And I will go to their face and point into their face and scream liar to their face. Because they know damn well they don't want that border secure, number one. When you could tell me 7 years from now, and it took us 44 months to win the Second World War and build atom bombs with brand new technology, don't tell me we need 7 years to secure a border. We went to the moon in about that amount of time. We went to the moon. No, they don't want to do it because the goal here is to keep the facade up. They spent billions of dollars on the virtual fence. I was on with Lou Dobbs when he was at CNN. And as only Lou Dobbs could ask me, he said, Mike Cutler, what do you think of the Secure Border Initiative Network, the virtual fence? And I said, Lou, it will do exactly what it's supposed to do. Cost $1 gazillion and stop virtually nobody. And that's exactly what happened. The GAO came along years afterwards and said that they had squandered billions and achieved nothing. They do it so that the low-information idiot voter who's more concerned with who's winning Dancing with the Stars than the future of their own children, because they're so derelict in their duties as parents, hear from a congressman, I voted for the Secure Border Initiative Network, $2 billion. And let me tell you, they would invite this guy to bed with them. They're so ecstatic. What they don't understand is they're buying nothing. It's like hiring a painter who shows up every morning and they put down the nice white drop sheets and they're so wonderful and courteous. And for 5 weeks they're painting the living room and they say, why are they working so long? We're paying them by the hour. And they realize they've got an empty paint can. This is about spending the money to make sure that nothing changes because they don't want the situation solved. They are happy right now with the way things are, and they'll be ecstatic until there's another explosion and there's dead bodies, and then they'll be thumping the podium and saying, why didn't they connect the dots? Well, I have connected the dots. Thousands of other witnesses before Congress have connected the dots, but it's hard to hear when you have money stuffed down into your eardrums. That's the problem.
I see
have I
that.
answered your question? Do I make sense to you now?
You made sense to me in the beginning. You know, I agreed with what you were saying. I just thought it wasn't, all around security. That's just my opinion.
No, I'm just telling you that this piecemeal approach is designed to be piecemeal so that this is what's known as distraction. Okay? So that your business
right.
this is how, if you want to look up something interesting in your history books, go look up the Calais Deception. On D-Day, we had the Nazis. Do you know about the Calais Deception?
Yes, I am, but I'm going to get off and let the others talk for a minute.
Sure.
But in a nutshell, if you were the one who was to replace the DHS secretary, what would you do?
Day one. If let's say we had a new president and they said, we're in a hole, dig it out for us. I want a massive hiring campaign, but carefully, so we screen people, so we don't wind up with bad guys getting badges. I would detail FBI, ATF, and DEA agents to enforce immigration laws, to start going after the people who are here illegally, to turn the magnet off immediately, and I would start to position people down on the Mexican border, and I would make certain that we had interior enforcement ramping up, because inevitably people are going to get through. But they need to know that once they get to the inner cities, once they get to their destinations, there's a warm reception waiting for them. You can't win a baseball game if you have the outfielders sit out the game. I don't care how good the team is. Anybody who can hit the ball over the infielder's head gets an in-the-park home run. We have to plug that gap. And so interior enforcement plugs the gap, and it's not just about E-Verify. That's another lie. Because if you're giving people employment authorization, they get a magic card that sails them through the E-Verify process. We need to look at this as that colander and plug each and every hole. Not to say, well, we'll start with the Mexican border, and in 7 years, hey, folks, in 7 years, we may not be here. We don't have 7 years. We're at war. We're at war.
Oh, thank you. That was an excellent response. Anyway, thank you so much.
I hope I'm clear to everybody that's out there. We need to understand what war means. This isn't a hobby. This isn't a game. This isn't about jaywalking. This is an existential threat to America. And we have idiots in Washington who are dining well, taking the campaign contributions, which are nothing less than bribes. If you get pulled over by a police officer for speeding and you offer the cop a $50, there's a good chance he's going to put handcuffs on you. But if you go to the mayor of that town during campaign season and write a big enough check, I guarantee you can get the speed limit raised. That's where we are today. Am I wrong, Annie?
No, you're 100% right, and I want to remind everyone, I've been putting up your link up in the chat room, which is michaelcutler.net. It's also on the show page so that people listening in on a podcast can just click on the show page and go directly to your website. What you are saying is so very true. Our politicians keep on saying, oh, we're going to just close the border, and that's going to solve our problems. No, as you said, right, you have a colander, and everything is just pouring out of it. You've got to close up every single hole, and we've got to hold our politicians accountable. And we've got to make sure that whoever comes in as president has a good DHS, director, or whatever the commissioner, or whatever they call it. My mind just went completely blank.
Secretary.
Thank you. I had a brain fart. But whoever is there will do that. We'll look at security because, as I said, it's from scanning everyone coming in and out of every single harbor, every single airport. are people that are coming in with visas that just disappear. It's not just the southern border or the northern border. It is the East Coast. It is the West Coast. It is every single city that has an airport, whether or not it's an international or domestic airport.
We need to end the visa waiver program. Do you know that they now have something called APC, Automated Passport Control? I don't want to control passports. I want to control people. So now you have aliens who don't have to submit an application for a visa because they come from Europe. You know, on 9/11, we had 26 visa waiver countries, 26. That program should have ended the morning after 9/11. We also used to have something called transit without visa, where aliens could land at Kennedy Airport and take a flight the next day to Argentina, whatever. Well, they were on their own. And if they didn't show up, you know, they just added to the population of illegals. After 9/11, you would have thought that would have ended. It took George W. Bush until August of 2002 to suspend transit without visa. That's how powerful the tourism travel industry is. You know, so you have the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I had lunch with Ralph Nader when I was in Washington. I just did a speaking event for Allen Freed Associates, their speakers bureau that conducts seminars for the military and the intelligence services. And it's just absolutely amazing, because when we talk about the visa waiver program, people are astonished about this, because what I focused on was the benefits to the visa requirement. It's a screening process. If they lie on the application, they're committing fraud. You can prosecute them. It keeps terrorists off airplanes. And yet we've expanded the visa waiver program from 26 such visa waiver countries on 9/11 to today, where we have 38 countries participating in the visa waiver program. And when you listen to these news conferences with these members of Congress, they will talk about it. Oh, this terrible situation. The Europeans are now being attracted to ISIS because they don't need visas. Okay, and what are you doing about it? We are expanding the visa waiver program at the behest. And when I went to Washington to do this event for Freed, I had lunch with none other than Ralph Nader. And Ralph Nader was driven to insanity by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is why I don't understand why folks who consider themselves liberal don't get it. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is as evil as it gets. They're the ones pushing the expansion of the H-1B visa. They're the ones expanding the visa waiver program. They created something. It's an unholy alliance known as the Discover America Partnership. And I talked to Nader about this because he hates the chamber. They tried to set him up. They tried to do all kinds of things when he was arguing about auto safety, because all that they are about is profit at any cost. It doesn't get greedy or more dirty than that. I call them the Chamber of Horrors. And so the Chamber of Commerce has gotten what they want, but they're still not happy. We're at 38. They want almost every country to be visa waiver to satisfy the hotel and hospitality industries. Isn't it reassuring to know that the people who are responsible for clean linen and room service are now making national security decisions for the United States? I kid you not. I kid you not. So here we have, they forgot Al-Qaeda has discovered America along with ISIS. So they're expanding the visa waiver program. And now, again, a program they pushed, they have APC, Automated Passport Control, that when you come off the airplane and you entered under the visa waiver program, which meant you didn't speak to anybody in the first place at the embassy or consulate, as long as you've been in this country once since 2008, and I don't know why that is, but that's a long time ago. That's, 7 years ago? Somebody who came in at age 19 is now 26, 25, whatever, maybe got radicalized. Maybe he's a terrorist. God knows. You want the opportunity to look at the passport? No, you don't have to. Because if you can come in under the visa waiver program, you can go to a kiosk that looks like an ATM machine. So once again, the opportunity to speak to somebody with a badge is taken away, and we just admit the person, and they go poof, and they disappear. It's estimated that nearly half of all illegal aliens in the United States right now did not run the Mexican border but came through ports of entry. And now we've made it that much easier. And God only knows what the rate of overstay will be, and we don't know what the rate is, even though it was supposed to be part of U.S. Visit. Now they changed the name of the program after giving Accenture more than $1 billion for that program that was mandated by the change of immigration law in '96, mandated by the 9/11 Commission, They gave these people all kinds of money starting in 2003. It still doesn't work. And you know why I believe we don't know whether or not aliens are actually leaving the United States when they're supposed to, even though the 9/11 Commission said it was important? Because the visa waiver program had a provision that said that two of the components was that you could not have a visa refusal rate that was greater than, I think, 3% for citizens of those countries that participate, and an overstay rate of 3 or 4%. I don't know how they come up with these numbers. Well, you could certainly manipulate visa refusal rates by telling consular officials, if aliens come into your booth from whatever country, you must give them a visa no matter what. That would change the visa refusal rates. But facts, as John Adams said, are stubborn things. If somebody overstays and we have a record of it, there's no way around it. So I really believe they made certain to spend a lot of money on a program that would not work. So to this day, we don't know who overstays. So that way, countries on the visa waiver list don't have to worry about whether or not their citizens go missing in the United States. It's all corrupt. Everything is for sale. We are selling the future of our country, the future of our children and our grandchildren and their children. We are selling it to the highest bidder. I really think that it's time that we got a new cabinet-level official in Washington. Maybe they can get the guy from the Mecum Auto Auction. I think he does a pretty decent job. And we need the official government auctioneer. What do you think of that idea?
I find it absolutely fascinating, because another major problem we have is, as you mentioned, law enforcement, where a police officer or emergency service personnel ends up coming in contact with an illegal immigrant. You know they're an illegal immigrant, but your hands are tied. You're not allowed to report them. You're not allowed to arrest them.
And you and I lost a friend. Well, you lost a friend, and we lost a police officer because of that.
Yeah, Bobby Shoddy. And this is something that the 26 states are fighting. That why they had that lawsuit, saying, let us enforce the laws. We come across them, yes, we will detain them and let you deport them. But we're not being allowed to do that. So for those 26 states, they get it. They get it. And for us, we're finding a lower illegal immigrant rate because they know we're coming after them. So we have to get what we have on the books to be enforced. We have to be able to let law enforcement do their job. We have to be able to let Border Security and INS do the job by enforcing the current laws on the books. And the ones for these visas and other things, we've got to get off the books. We can start by plugging the border that way.
Oh, absolutely. Look, everybody understands deterrence through enforcement. What did we do with drunk drivers? Drunk driving used to be a joke in America. I remember John Wayne going on the Tonight Show. And I think everybody loved John Wayne, although I'm kind of perplexed when people call John Wayne a great American hero. I think he was a great American actor, but he was never in combat. Jimmy Stewart, Audie Murphy, Lee Marvin were great American heroes. John Wayne played them, but he played them well. And I remember Johnny Carson with John Wayne, and John Wayne said, you know, Johnny, I think God must have been my co-pilot because I couldn't even figure out what button to push in the elevator when I left so-and-so's house because we had one hell of a party. And I got in my car, and the next morning when I woke up on the floor of the living room, I looked out the window, and sure enough, there was my car in my driveway, not a scratch on it. God must have been my co-pilot, or words to that effect, and the audience was going crazy laughing. That wouldn't be a joke today. And what happened is enough people died, there was enough carnage, and what was the solution? You see, if the politicians dealt with drunk driving the way they deal with immigration, they would raise the acceptable blood alcohol level. When I was a kid, the acceptable level was 0.1%. Now it's 0.08. They actually tightened it. But if this was immigration, they would have said, let's make it 0.2%. Because, you know, then almost nobody who gets pulled over for being drunk or for having an accident will be legally drunk because they will have passed out long before they get to 0.2. So we could now say we no longer have a drunk driving problem. We'll have a lot of dead bodies and smashed vehicles, but legally they're not drunk, so everything is great. They didn't do that, did they? They tightened up, they lowered the level, they implemented sobriety checkpoints, they imposed harsh penalties. We're going to take your car, your money, your license, your freedom. So now people say, gee whiz, I'd rather not do that because I can't afford to go without a car. I don't want to go to jail. Enforcement through deterrence. And look, let's be very blunt about this. There are more American drivers than there are illegal aliens in the United States. Let's look at texting and driving and making phone calls without a hands-free and driving. There are more drivers in America who have cell phones than there are illegal aliens. But yet you've never heard anybody say, well, there's too many people with cell phones for us to do anything about it. They launch a massive public affairs campaign, public service announcements. They pull people over. They give them summonses. They take their licenses. They hammer them. And why are they doing it? To get people to stop texting while driving. I mean, you would think that you have to be brain dead to think you can safely text and drive, but the idiots are out there. They did the same thing with other violations of law. You ratchet up the punishment, and you convince people that, well, maybe we won't catch it today, but sooner or later you're going to get caught, and you're going to have a wall fall on your head when we're done with you. And people say, you know what, it's not worth the risk. People do that all the time. It's not worth the risk. When 9/11 happened, if you remember, the Belt Parkway became a speedway. It was like the Indy 500, and the road has a crappy surface with all the potholes. There were accidents everywhere because everybody knew most of the New York City Police Department was in Lower Manhattan directing the trucks and the traffic and securing the remains. And so there was a free-for-all. It got so bad, what did they do? They brought in the state police for the first time in my memory to run traffic checkpoints and radar traps on the Belt Parkway in Brooklyn. The state police never came into New York City before. But they knew if they didn't do something, we'd be in trouble. And what was the reaction? People slowed down. Why? Because they saw the troopers out with their radar guns. That's what you do when you want people to stop doing something. You make it clear that what you're doing is not only undesirable, but we're going to punish you. When you have politicians standing there and saying, well, there's too many people for us to deport you, and it's not nice to run the border, but if you do, then we're going to take care of you, and we're going to give you a pathway to lawful status, but not citizenship. Well, what's the message? When I testified before the Senate 2 years ago, I said that the statements by the politicians and the actions of this administration, in essence, had fired the starter's pistol for aspiring illegal aliens from around the world. The race is on. And for these aspiring illegal aliens for every country on this planet, the finish line to this race is the border of the United States of America. Tell me if I'm getting it wrong, Annie.
No, you're not. You're not getting anything wrong at this point. You know, we have everything in place that we could enforce legal immigration and get rid of illegal immigration. But our government is doing everything to countermand that. And we've got to recognize this. This resettlement program that I mentioned, you know, it is a godsend to the illegal immigrant. For every single person they get resettled, they get a portion. They get paid by our tax dollars. These non-government agencies, which a lot of them are attached to Jewish synagogues, Presbyterians, Catholics.
Every denomination, and what's so pathetic, and I'm not going to cast a wide net and point fingers. This isn't what this is about. But the radicals are the enemy of every other religion. I mean, look, there's armed warfare, there's armed conflict in the Middle East by Sunni against Shia, by different factions. And if you think they have no tolerance for people of the same religion, they feel even more hostile to a diversity of religious belief. So without screening people adequately, and that's what we keep coming back to, we're inviting in the potential. And what did I just read to you about how political asylum was an important embedding tactic? The Tsarnaev brothers, this isn't hypothetical. The Tsarnaev brothers, who did such damage at the marathon, and this other little twerp that they're going to execute, got political asylum. And nobody at the Department of Homeland Surrender, as I call DHS, could figure out that if these folks went back to Russia once they were given lawful status, that maybe they lied on their application claiming credible fear. To be entitled to political asylum, you have to articulate what's known as credible fear. What does that mean? If you send me back to my country, at the very least, I will be persecuted. I will be in deep trouble because of my religion, my race, my ethnicity, my political beliefs. Please don't send me back to where I'm maybe getting killed. Okay, that's fair. We're being humanitarian, and I agree with that. However, they went home. But they went home, so how honest were they about the threat? They lied. And nobody could figure this out?
No, what's ironic about that, at the same time this was going on, there was a German couple in Pennsylvania. They emigrated here because they wanted to homeschool their children. They didn't agree with what the government was teaching their kids, so they wanted to homeschool them. And they said, if we go back to Germany, they will take our children away and they will place us in jail. We want political asylum. They were denied political asylum. And because of that, they're being forced to go back to Germany, and they face jail, and they face their children being permanently taken away from them. They would not give them political asylum, but they would give the Boston bomber and his brother political asylum when there was actually, in truth, no fear of harm.
And by the way, and it gets worse, their sister was arrested about a year after the attack, and she was arrested for threatening to blow up her ex-boyfriend. You see a pattern here? So wait a minute. Why wasn't she picked up as soon as the brothers were identified as terrorists? Think about that. Clearly, they committed fraud. When I went to Washington, I talked about a case where the FBI arrested a terrorist in Ohio about a month and a half ago, charged him with supporting a terrorist organization, 2 counts, charged him 1 count lying to an FBI agent because he told the agent he had gone to Turkey when, in fact, he'd gone to Syria, as I understand it. What they did not charge him with was lying on his application for citizenship. Now, why is that important? It's very important. This guy is 23 years old. His brother communicated electronically with him, and he became a United States citizen specifically to get a U.S. passport to facilitate his travel to Syria, where he could participate in fighting against our soldiers. So not only did he lie on the application, which is all you need to prove to make that case, but it became actually a part of his plan. And so they charged him with everything but lying on his application for citizenship, and all the evidence that he provided to the grand jury to make the other 3 charges stick would very easily have also shown that he lied when he applied for naturalization. All they would have needed to do is to get a hold of his application. Section 11 of that application asks, do you belong to any foreign organizations? And then they go down the list. Does any of these organizations involved with terrorism? If you say yes, you don't get naturalized. He had to have lied. That's naturalization fraud. Why is it important? Because when he gets out of jail, he will probably be no more than 40 years old, maybe younger. As a U.S. citizen, we can't do anything with him. He's going to be wandering around out there. He came back to the United States specifically with the plan of committing burglaries to get his hand on guns of homeowners to kill soldiers and law enforcement. What's the solution? Strip him of his citizenship, and deport him when he gets out of jail. But yet under this administration, under no circumstances, will we use immigration as a factor in national security. I have gone to congressional hearings where members of Congress have said to me point blank, immigration has nothing to do with terrorism. If I try to read the 9/11 Commission report, they talk over you. We don't want to hear it. That's not what we're here for today. And of course, then usually the chairman would countermand them, and I'd get to say what I had to say. But how can any sensible person say, after what I've read today on your program, and there's much more where that came from, and common sense tells you, that isn't the whole issue about these people being able to come here in the first place? So
yeah, immigration has everything to do with it.
And by the way, why do we need to import more foreign workers, which is what Cruz wants? Cruz wants a 500% increase in H-1B visas. Rand Paul says he would not vote for comprehensive reform, and I wrote about this for Progressives for Immigration Reform. Why wouldn't he vote for it? Because he doesn't believe there should be any limit on foreign high-tech workers. What's the value to an education if you can't get a good job? And do you know that student loans are the second biggest source of personal debt in America, second only to home mortgages? And according to what I've read, you know how much money is outstanding right now in student loans? $1.2 billion.
Mike, we're out of time. We're down to now about 4 minutes on the clock, and I want to thank you for joining. This show could go on for hours and hours and hours. And Sue, thank you for chiming in and adding from your perspective too. We've got a huge problem on our hand, and hopefully we can convince our lawmakers to get their heads out of their butts.
Well, that's
do
the job of the
something better.
American people. You know, democracy is not a spectator sport, as I always like to say. We've got to get together, folks. Let's forget about who's a Democrat and who's a Republican. We're Americans today. We can have our other disagreements, but put them aside. This is job one, is protecting our country, and you can't protect your country with open borders, with an immigration system that provides identity documents to people who we don't even know what their true identities or even their countries of citizenship. It doesn't get more serious or dangerous than this.
So, Mike, I want to thank you for joining us, and you're
Thank
going
you.
to be back again. Sue, thank you for co-hosting with me. You had fantastic input. Want to remind everyone we will be back on Friday, and our guest is going to be Larry Pratt from Gun Owners of America. So I hope you join us, same back time, same back station, back here on Friday. So I say good night and God bless.
If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan.
Tell you how it's gonna work, kids. You're working hard like your parents both did. Everything you earn by breaking your back, we're gonna redistribute when we make our pay tax. Hey, take it down, don't be a jerk. Cause none deserve it better than the ones who won't work. We're gonna throw away what our forefathers wrote. Use your hard money just to buy a new boat. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place of the left democracy. Little big houses for you and me. Oh, welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Here in the land of the not so free. Party not confessions, drugs for our own cause. We got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political courageous will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom as you praise Jesus Christ. The president of market doesn't know I'm free. You cannot make a move without the NSAPC. Don't expect equality, respect for fair play. The IRS will target those who vote the wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place of the left democracy. Little big houses for you and me. Oh, welcome to the place. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Here in the land of the not so free. Oh, 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 oh.
This is the most transparent administration in history.
Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you can build that.
Election test results on the page. Attorney General was lying even while on the road. And knowing now you better answer for the racist vote. Hey, shut your mouth, swallow your pride. What does it matter? Our ambassador died. There's nothing you can do about it, minus the faces. Disagree with anything you label racist. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place of the left democracy. Little big house for you and me. Welcome. drugs are not good for me.